Welcome to the broadcast, my dear old fruits. I must begin with an apology because I made a boob yesterday after I'd finished filming the video and I was ready to publish it. All of a sudden, the Royal Family Order was published and revealed for the very first time. But I told you that it was pale green. And I flashed up a photograph, and indeed it was to my eyes, but my eyes were deceived because in fact it was not pale green, it was pale blue. So my apologies for that, my dear. I mean, you've got your own eyes, you would have seen it for yourself to make your own decision. But it is officially pale blue, and those orders, as you know, are worn to the left shoulder at state events and state occasions. And we are told that the colour was chosen by the king himself. It was personally selected based on his great-grandpapa's ribbon, King George V, because that was a similar sort of pale blue. I actually am a little bit disappointed. I know that it provides a link to his great-grandpapa, but I would have liked him to have had his own colour, and actually I think that pale green, or eau de Nil as one of you put it, would have been rather apt and rather appropriate for Charles with his green credentials, although that's a little bit too obvious. But it would have been nice to have his own unique colour, wouldn't it? But nevertheless, pale blue, of course, is a gorgeous colour, and it is the 7th Royal Family Order, and the first one that is being commissioned without ivory. This time the portrait is painted on a synthetic, translucent, treated plastic sheet, similar in texture to a synthetic ivory by the name of ivorine. One can only hope that the diamonds surrounding it aren't diamondique. The diamonds came from existing loose stones within the royal collection, as did the gold, and the oil portrait was conjured by the hand of the miniaturist Elizabeth Meek, MBE. It is mounted in a diamond-set white and yellow gold frame with the king's crowned cipher on the yellow gold rear, and the mount is suspended from a golden enamel Tudor crown. The family order was designed and constructed by crown jeweller Mark Appleby. The pale blue silk bow, created by the Queen's favourite milliner, and we see her in his hats all of the time, Philip Tracy. Now, I said to you yesterday, jokingly, that Queen Camilla really couldn't be expected to wear white with the ruby gem in the middle of her forehead to honour the Japanese flag. But in fact, of course she could, and of course she did. That is exactly what happened, isn't it, my dear? It's exactly what happened at the state banquet when she chose the Burmese ruby tiara for the occasion. Quite ingenious and totally in keeping with royal tradition. And I'll show you an example here of Queen Elizabeth II matching the colours of the Japanese flag in Tokyo, 1975. You see how they do this? The gown was by Fiona Clare, but I'm afraid it didn't especially excite me. It was nice, it was certainly regal, but it didn't really ring my bell. And also, if I'm quite honest with you, I'm not sure that I would have chosen the portrait of King Charles by Hugo Bernan that they did to form the basis of the miniature of the Royal Family Order. It looks as if he's got his mouth slightly open, which he does a lot and did throughout the coronation. I might be wrong, but I think it looks more regal and more poised and serene with a closed mouth, as I've said before. Michael, we are not a codfish. It looks like he's about to dribble, that's all. The king was presented with Japan's highest honour, the collar of the Supreme Order of the Chrysanthemum. What a wonderful sounding order, isn't it? And we've discussed those orders before. And he honoured his guests by wearing the sash, the star and the badge of that order. And in return, the emperor was appointed to the most noble order of the Garter, as you know, the highest order of chivalry here in the kingdom. And gifts were exchanged, and they sound rather sumptuous. King Charles gave his old friend of 40 years, the emperor, a bottle of Scotch whisky from the Japanese-owned Aberdeenshire distillery Glengarry, accompanied with a pair of gold and silver beakers commissioned to feature the imperial seal and the king's cipher. The merry band perused royal artefacts at the Buckingham Palace exhibition, including the emperor's own university thesis. They mingled with curators and were joined by the Edinburghs, the Duke of Kent and the Gloucesters. The Queen presented the Empress with a handmade bespoke fan incorporating Japanese and British symbols of good luck. And the King received a lacquerware box from the Emperor in honour of those who have been affected by the earthquake that hit Japan earlier this year. Queen Camilla received a Saga Nishiki brocade handbag presented by the Empress. Saga Nishiki is a Japanese traditional craft which was exhibited at the 1910 Japan-British exhibition in London. As they processed, I did notice the rather odd sight of a few ladies, and perhaps a few gentlemen, curtsying in the wrong direction. Did you see that? Or bowing in the wrong direction, with their backs to their majesties. I'm presuming that was some kind of choreographical error, but who knows. The king read beautifully in his speeches, although too slowly for some of the funny quips to fly off of the page as they should. This is the trouble. Jokes or quips require a feeling of spontaneity, and spontaneity requires a little more pace.
Perhaps you would allow me to note one particular individual who turns 50 this year.
Raised in a London suburb with her twin sister, a self-made entrepreneur worth billions of dollars, and a UNICEF Children's Ambassador on top of all that.
So I can only wish a very happy birthday to Hello Kitty.
I saw elegant dress from many of the guests. Tables were decorated with sweet peas, peonies, and roses from the gardens of Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle, together with the Japanese maple tree. And I had a quick squiz at the menu as well, and everything looked divine, with a sprinkling of summer vegetables over the more sophisticated dishes. But the thing that grabbed my attention was the bombe glace melba. In other words, an ice cream bomb with peach sorbet insert on a bed of compressed peaches. Ooh, delicious. The Duchess of Edinburgh made a splash in green. The Susanna crystalline couture silk gown paired with the lotus flower tiara, together with Queen Elizabeth's pear-shaped diamond drop demi-parure. And the Empress of Japan wore the imperial chrysanthemum tiara for the very first time. The Duchess of Gloucester wore the Cartier India tiara. Amid the array of the great and good, and possibly wicked, were a sprinkling and smattering of politicians, of course. One of them was Kemi Badenoch, who was praised for looking chic in the black number she wore. I thought she looked rather nice. And this is where I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent and one of my rants. And unfortunately, it's going to involve Miss Badenoch. Mrs. Badenoch, I should say. I, as you might recall, was first out of the box to champion Mrs. Badenoch a couple of years ago when she was running as a potential leader of the Conservative Party but lost out to our current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. And over the last 2 years, I've continued to consistently say that she is possibly my pick of the crop out of that lot. She is the strongest on the issues that I care about and able to express them in the best way out of what's available. But I always said that I thought she was a little bit green around the gills and lacked some experience, which she has been garnering since 2 years ago. She's now Secretary of State for Business and Trade and President of the Board of Trade and also Minister for Women and Equalities. So she's accumulated some experiences, but I have been deeply disappointed in her comments this week in response to the actor David Tennant. He appeared at an award ceremony a couple of days ago, the British LGBT Awards. That sounds like a barrel of laughs, doesn't it, my dear? Something that the letters community do for being a celebrity ally and giving his support for the trans community. Okay. Clap, 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 gold star. Well done. Wonderful. And during his speech of acceptance, he made a few digs at Mrs. Badenoch, presumably for her assertion that there are two immutable sexes and her defence of women's rights. I suppose you could say that Kemi Badenoch is what radical trans activists would term a TERF, a trans exclusionary radical feminist or whatever it is. All that jazz. And he was among the sort of crowd that would be sympathetic with that sort of notion. And he said words along the line of the fact that things will be a lot better when Kemi Badenoch doesn't exist anymore.
Until we wake up and Kemi Badenoch doesn't exist anymore. I don't wish ill of her, I just wish her to shut up.
Now, I might not agree with his sentiments about shutting up Kemi Badenoch, but as far as I'm concerned, and I'm pretty sure that I would have more in common with her politics than his. I don't know anything else about David Tennant's politics. I don't follow him. I'm not into Doctor Who, which is what he's most famous for. What he thinks is his own affair. He has the right to say what he feels, and it's not unusual for celebrities, especially the woke, but not only the woke, to dress down politicians and to use award ceremonies to do so. It's rather vulgar, but that's what they do sometimes, isn't it? Or to chide them rather saucily. If you want an example of that, put Julian Clary, Norman Lamont in the search bar on YouTube and you'll see what I mean. A bit of chiding goes on here and there, my dear. So, although some people might have found what he said distasteful, it is actually Kemi's reply to him on Twitter that thoroughly left me disheartened, and the widespread reaction that seems to be in sympathy with her. I might be a lone wolf here, but she said, "I will not shut up. I will not be silenced by men who prioritise applause from Stonewall over the safety of women and girls." Well, so far so good. If only she'd have ended her tweet there, I would have been in full support of it. But then she went on to say, "A rich, lefty, white male celebrity, so blinded by ideology he can't see the optics of attacking the only black woman in government by calling publicly for my existence to end." Which, as I saw it, and as it was actually rhetoric. Rhetoric is attacked roundly these days by the wokerati. I don't expect it to be attacked by those who are supposed to be preserving a sense of freedom, a sense of humour, a sense of freedom of expression. For example, rhetoric. He also specifically stated that he actually wished her no ill. She went on to say, "Tennant is one of Labour's celebrity supporters. This is an early example of what life will be like if they win." And she mentioned the fact that Keir Starmer had stood by while Rosie Duffield was hounded. He and his supporters will do the same with the country. Do not let bigots and bullies win. I'm afraid that, in my opinion, she has stooped to conquer, and I'm extremely disappointed in her. She has debased herself using the methods and the underhanded war games that we see in the wokedom, not the kingdom, but the wokedom, used in wokery. Everything that she purports to be opposed to, she is attempting to silence a man and shut him down by invoking his whiteness to begin with, for comparison to her blackness, when she claims, as far as my memory serves me correct, forgive me if I'm wrong, but she always claims to rally against the likes of critical race theory, specifically, and claims of white privilege, and she is bringing her own blackness into the equation as a weapon. And I'm not here for it, because his critique actually had nothing to do with her colour. And why should we have to be aware of the optics? Why does she have to school everybody on the optics of attacking the only female black woman in the government? She is othering herself. She is othering herself because she's not alone in getting attacked. Yes, she might be the only black woman in her position so far, even though the Prime Minister himself is brown, but she's certainly not the first woman. Take, for example, Margaret Thatcher, the whitest, most British woman you could ever wish to meet, and look at the way that she was roundly abused and continues to be cursed on a level rarely seen. Famously, Ding Dong the Witch is Dead went to number 1 or whatever it was, shot its way up the charts when she died. And her funeral was protested, These things happen. She's certainly not the only one from either side or any political party. If he went low, I'm afraid that she went lower. It is a regressive lefty attitude to take, and a regressive lefty stance. And one might expect it from the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But a lot worse has been said about other politicians by celebrities, a lot worse than "shut up," as David Tennant said. And then the Prime Minister himself wades in, old Fishy Rishi, Freedom of speech is the most powerful feature of our democracy. He seems totally unaware of the irony of that statement, doesn't he? Totally unaware. Talking about freedom of speech. If you're calling for women to shut up and wishing they didn't exist, you are the problem. What an utter overreaction, and taking the words of rhetoric literally in a willful weaponising of those words. It is virtue signalling guff, and it illustrates only too clearly how the existing Tory party have come to be known as Labour Light. So after a couple of years of Kemi Badenoch being in my favour, she's on the outs. She's on the outs, and she seems to have shown either some true colours or war game tactics that I don't approve of and don't want to see coming from either side. Let's take heart in the fact that Queen Camilla was back to work and service this morning, even after that very busy night hosting the state visit. She was up and at 'em, looking fresh as a daisy, and she appeared at a primary school in Purley for a literature festival and was greeted with delicate curtsies from the school children. Her Majesty learned about the Shepherd and Sheep Reading Initiative, which allocates new pupils an older mentor and friend to role model the new pupils' first year at school.
How are you? Hello. My goodness me, there's my husband.
She wore an easy, summery tunic dress with floral prints and was jangling with her signature Van Cleef & Arpels bling. And she looks like the perfect granny, doesn't she? Especially on a gloriously sunny morning like this. The perfect granny, in my estimation, for my taste, even more so than the late Queen Elizabeth. Yes, I'm going to say it, for my personal taste, because I like hugs and physical affection from grannies. I do. I still snuggle up to mine. So, as affectionate as the late Queen was for her grandchildren, it wouldn't have sufficed for me, I'm afraid. No. But Queen Camilla, she's got it in spades for me, and the children responded magnificently to her. Utterly charmed, and the visit was a great success. A spiky little comment here from Linda. Looking out for Linda. Is it Linda Lovelace or Linda Lusardi? Linda says, funny, isn't it? You can look into all the fake BS about H&M, but you ignore all the unhuman and evil stuff and Donny. And she's talking about Donald Trump. Donny wants your kind, as he says, put away into mental homes. Keep your biased blind eye, my dear. Actually, my biases are born of experience. Love a girl. My lived experience. My livid experience. The Queen was a woman, and she did not motion for Donny to go first, inspecting the troops, as we discussed yesterday. The King is a man, and he motioned for the Emperor to go first. Manners, my dear. Well, my dear, I realise that the Queen is a woman and the King is a man, and you might think that there would be a different etiquette. But, well, firstly, you will have noticed that Obama also led from the front, in front of Prince Philip, the late Duke, because he was alive, and then Biden actually was shown around by Charles, and he led, President Biden led there as well, so it is the right thing to do for the guest to go first. You say that circumstances were different in the case of Trump's visit because he was in the company of a queen and a woman, but you miss the point that first and foremost she is a monarch and head of state. Well, I did look for more examples of inspections featuring the Queen at state visits on YouTube. I looked for a few minutes actually, and I couldn't find any footage. Perhaps some of you might be able to. So I couldn't actually back up my claim that it is the right thing for the guest to go in front of the Queen. But what I will tell you is that you are wrong when you say that she did not motion for Donald to go first, because look at the footage. Look at the footage. What else is the Queen doing here if she is not motioning for the President to go in front of her? And actually, and even when you look at the comments for this, people are saying, oh, it's very awkward and Trump doesn't know what he's doing. Well, whether he did or didn't know what he was going to do, one thing that you can say for sure is that courtesy and manners were at the forefront of his mind, because it would take a cretin not to be able to notice the fact that he was doing his very best not to march in front of her. Perhaps that was why he was looking a bit hesitant, because he wanted to walk with the Queen from what I could see. She told him, no, go ahead. She points to him. He doesn't bustle forward like some sort of confidence trickster running into a brothel or some sort of stripper's bar. Does he? And then as he moves forward, he still feels a little bit uncomfortable doing it, and feels that it's perhaps a little bit impolite, and stalls a bit and looks, and she has to hurry him up again. Okay, you could say that's a bit awkward, but it's certainly not impolite. It's certainly not thoughtless. So those of you who ask me not to defend Donald Trump because you don't like it, I'm afraid tough titty. I don't care if it's Trump or Biden or Sunak or Starmer. It doesn't matter whether I appreciate their politics or not. I will speak out if I see some sort of unfairness going under the radar, and it is unfair, the flack that he took for doing what every other visitor does on a state visit. And he certainly wasn't trying to diss the Queen, and in fact he spoke so beautifully of the Queen and treated her with the utmost dignity and respect, and said that she epitomizes beauty, that she was a beautiful woman, and he behaved beautifully with her. And as much as people might not like it, she seemed to very much enjoy his company as well. It was full of laughter and amusement. She's seen it all, done it all, my dear, and she tries to look for the good in everybody. And I can assure you that's as difficult with Biden as it is with Trump. And I must say thanks to those of you who shared your recollection of Rollerina, who we looked at the end of yesterday's broadcast, very fun character. I'm still going through the comments, but the ones I've read, very interesting and fabulous. Not quite sure on the consensus whether she or he is still alive, but I was told in this comment that she has died, from HRH Michael, who said, during the 16-year period that I had worked at Barney's, I had the immense pleasure of seeing Rollerina on a regular basis, and so much so that she would stop by and chat with all of us who worked in the area at the time. Indeed, I often found myself alone chatting with her about all kinds of subjects. She was very lovely and funny. She could be serious at times, but when I say funny, I mean an absolute hoot. I feel really privileged to have witnessed just a glimpse of something magical and iconic from another time in New York City just before it disappeared. Regretfully, I recently learned that she had died. Rest in peace. A part of the city went dim. Well, the world is a stage, my dear. We all have our entrances and exits, don't we? Life is but a mauvais quart d'heure made up of exquisite moments. So there I go, rolling into Shakespeare. And wild. We must write our own script, mustn't we, my dears? Yes, we must. But it's time for me to take my own curtain call and say thank you for joining me on today's show, and I look forward to seeing you on the next performance of the River broadcast. Stay fruity and always on royal duty, my dears. Lots of love, ta-ta, and toodle pip.